This is the D6 generation.
Dice are our vice.
Creating not too horrible content since 2008.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Oh, I think we're well past that.
D6G Hot Take.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This time around, this isn't really a hot take. This is actually more of a slow burn. I have with me here today Tim Colonna, who's a local friend and friend of the show and gaming friend. And he has quite the journey. He's had quite the journey over the last few years. And Tim, first of all, are you now or have you ever been a gamer?
Well, I am. I must admit that I am. Yes.
Yeah. And how did you get started in gaming?
I mean, way back in the late 70s, early 80s with, buying my first AD&D books at the local bookstore. Then
now you're dating yourself with AD&D.
Well, I still play AD&D with my kids, and I actually have an active first edition group that I run a campaign for.
Oh, wow. That's old school.
Yes.
Okay. And then how did you segue that into it's a journey we're all familiar with. How did you segue that into miniatures?
When I got into the military and got to my first duty station at Fort Rucker, I got introduced to Warhammer there from a local game shop. I actually worked there part-time. We were big Magic players, and I kind of segued into Warhammer, which kind of renewed my interest in Battletech. So that kind of was the start of it. And over the years, I've worked for Games Workshop, I've worked for Mantic, I worked for Alien Dungeon, and now I have my own game.
Great. Now, what did you do for those other companies?
For Games Workshop, I was an outrider, and then I worked part-time for Forge World. I used to do shows for them.
Oh.
Mantic, I was a Pathfinder for them. So that's I actually still am a Pathfinder. So I did demos and shows and that sort of thing. Alien Dungeon, I actually worked for them at all the HMGS shows. So I used to go to Cold Wars, Historicon, Fallen every year. And I also worked on the All Quiet on the Western Front Kickstarter.
Very nice.
I helped beta test and write some of the rules and that sort of thing.
That's great. And that all leads you to Trilaterum.
Correct.
What is Trilaterum? Give us the elevator pitch for Trilaterum.
Sure. So Trilaterum is a 15 millimeter sci-fi miniatures game. It's set thousands and thousands of years in the future. Mankind has set off to the stars. The colony ships that originally launched, 100 years ago have finally gotten to some planets and started making colonies. And inevitably, as you start setting up colonies on other worlds, you meet alien races, and sometimes they're friendly and sometimes they're not. So these are the battles that have ensued. And there's a lot of behind the scenes fluff about different human factions as well as the alien factions that are in the game. And it's kind of an ongoing developing story. We've got our second round of starter sets that were released 2 years ago, and I'm actually getting ready to revamp the starter again, which will advance the timeline just a little bit as well. Nice. So we're constantly releasing miniatures, armies, and trying to add fluff as fast as I can, basically.
Wow,
there's a lot in the universe, so I'm trying to fill that in. Being just me, it's sometimes tough to find all the hours of the day to do everything. So, yeah.
Now, where did the idea come from? Like a lot of people think, I'm going to start my own game. just like a lot of people, a lot of people think a lot of things, Tim, as I'm sure you know. Okay, what is the difference between all those gamers out there who daydream about starting a game and you with Trilaterum?
So I'm a huge sci-fi fan. I have been for years and years, and pulp sci-fi has really been something that molded me over the years, from old Guy Kings and the Flash Gordon serials and all the old 60s sci-fi movies. And I just love that universe genre of just really cool pulpy sci-fi. And I love 15 millimeter. I cut my teeth on Flames of War for many years. 15 millimeter World War II game.
Yeah,
I love painting that scale. It's just a fun scale to me. And there just isn't that much out there games wise, but there's a surprisingly large amount of miniatures out there. There's several manufacturers that have large lines. So I wanted something to do with some of those really cool lines. So I started out by just writing the rules, and I had a friend that had a small line of 15 millimeter sci-fi. So I kind of wrote the rules and paired it with his miniatures, and we kind of sold side by side for a little while. That was just about 9 years ago that I wrote the first version of the rules.
Okay, and when you say sold side by side, you mean like at shows?
Correct. So I would go and run the game at shows, sell the rule books, and then, oh, hey, by the way, there's some miniatures available over here, that sort of thing. So then about maybe 6 years ago, I started dipping my toe into 3D printing, and I loved it. I really loved the whole design and execution of 3D printing is just fascinating to me. So I found some ranges that were inexpensive to license. So I started producing my own miniatures for the game. And that was before resin was big. So it was all still plastic FDM. Right. So the quality was good, but it just wasn't where it could be. So I sold it that way for a number of years. And then right before COVID hit, I got my first resin printer and I started dipping my toe into that and really liked it. And then COVID hit. And there's no more shows, and most of my exposure is through shows. At that time, I had a website, and we were selling some product off the website, but I would say the vast majority was at shows.
Okay.
So when COVID hit, I talked to my wife, and I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. And I had kind of a little nest egg from Trilaterum sitting in the Trilaterum bank accounts. So we decided, let's just go whole hog. So I scrapped the miniatures line I had. I found a wonderful sculptor, JC Fairclough, it's the Hobgoblin Studios, I believe.
Okay.
I'll give you a link to put in the show notes.
Okay.
She's out of the UK. She's a wonderful sculptor. She had her own line called Waste Man. She's done a lot of work for old school miniatures over in the UK. And I just started talking to her, and we really hit it off. And so since end of 2019 or early 2020, we completely replaced the entire line. And so I picked up other lines along the way, purchasing licenses here and there when I can get them. But the vast majority of my sculpts are through JC.
Okay.
We've exploded. We've got over 10 armies now, probably close to 150 or 200 different individual packs of miniatures that are available. We've got terrain. We've got just all kinds of really cool stuff and really cool imagery. The one thing that we really like is the fact that she really works well with my style of old school pulpy science fiction. So we've got bear people, we've got frogmen, we've got fishmen. We've got a really cool line that is just coming out there, kind of like a cross between Darth Maul and Amazon women. It's just like this horny devil kind of headed female warriors. I just got a whole new line of Brontosaurus sci-fi creatures that are amazing. They're these big, chunky, with long, Brontosaurus necks, and just these cool weapons on their shoulders. I mean, just great, cool stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I want to go back because I as things occur, I don't want to just rush past them. First of all, when you got your first resin printer,
yes.
For people who don't really know the difference, and like for me, for instance, I'm just like resin. I don't know. Printing is printing, and that's cool, and it's like wizardry. What did that first resin printer? What did it do for you that was so cool? That was so different?
So on a traditional FDM plastic printer, you're limited to how small each layer can be. So for those that don't know, every 3D print, you basically take an object and you slice it. So it's like putting it into a big bread slicer. Mm-hmm. And those slices, how thick they are, will determine how much you see for striations on the miniature.
Yeah.
So on a traditional FDM printer, you can only get so small, and you can usually see the lines. You can get it so that they're almost indistinguishable, but they're there, and you can only get so much resolution, so much detail.
Okay.
On a resin printer, that factor is much smaller. Uh-huh. So on a typical print for an FDM, I'm printing each layer at maybe 0.1, 0.12 millimeters. On a resin printer, you're at 0.04 to 0.02, so 40 to 20 AUs.
Yeah.
So the lines become indistinguishable to the human eye. So you get much better results, a better looking product. And honestly, if you have a good dialed in resin printer, it's indistinguishable from a plastic injection molded model, because you just can't tell the difference. Because the human eye just can't see the lines when they're that small.
Right. Okay. Well, that is awesome. That's a game changer.
It is. And over the years, resin printers, when they first came out, were in the thousands, and then all of a sudden they were down at the same price, very close to the price of your typical FDM printers. The difference was the size of the build plate, so how much you could print at a time was much smaller.
Okay.
That has also changed as well. So now I have resin printers that can print almost as big as a traditional FDM printer plate. Mm-hmm. So I'm printing huge stuff now, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes with making a better and better product and refining it over time. I've moved all of the miniatures that I can to resin, and I'm continuously, even the larger vehicles, I'm starting to move to resin as well. My goal is to have the miniatures will be exclusively resin by the end of the year, with only the terrain being things that I use plastic FDM printing for.
Right. Awesome. Cool. And we're going to get back to that because so I should say that this whole interview is actually happening because I didn't even know there was a convention up north. And our friend Dave gave me a call and said, "Hey, I just saw something on Tim's Facebook, and apparently he's at a show." And it's like 2 hours away. It's actually on a personal level. My parents have been relatively ill lately, although they're doing really well now. And this convention is literally about half a mile away from the hospital where they keep going. So I was like, I'm not sure I want to go up there, but we went, and there was Tim, and I started chatting with Tim. And your story about what happened in COVID and what you did through COVID is really fascinating to me. I want to get to that, but I got a couple more of these questions and clarifications, because I know a lot of people who listen to the show want to get into gaming. They people want to write, that people want to design, people want to draw.
Sure.
When you say that you met JC, where did you meet her? Like how did that partnership initially form and develop?
So that is actually really funny. I was a fan of her miniatures for years, and I had honestly just finished painting up a warband for Wasteman, and my friend said, "Well, why don't you reach out to her and see if she'd be interested in sculpting?" She had a number of items on her Patreon and in her library that I was very excited about, and I really was like, oh, I wonder if I could license those. And so I literally just pinged her on Facebook Messenger, and we started a conversation, and it's just been a wonderful partnership.
That's awesome.
And she does great work, and I can't say anything bad about it. It's a wonderful relationship.
Awesome. So being active in the community and just reaching out, right? Not being afraid of rejection, I guess.
Correct.
And so in that answer, you were also mentioning this third point that I wanted to go back to a little bit is you saw some stuff that you liked of hers and you wanted to maybe license it. And then you've said several times where you saw some lines and you wanted now my vocabulary has failed.
Acquire them?
Acquire them, yeah. So acquire them or loop them into the Trilaterum sort of universe. How does that work? What exactly do you mean when you say, I acquired some lines or I saw some lines that I was interested in?
So a lot of what I purchase for lines are Kickstarters. Mm-hmm. A lot of people will put up a Kickstarter and say, and have a lifetime commercial license attached to it. So you pledge at a certain level and you get that lifetime commercial license, which allows you to sell prints of that. So there's actually some pretty good value out there. There's a lot of Kickstarters that you can pick up for very reasonably priced that has that commercial license tacked onto it. Mm-hmm. And then I just, if there are miniatures that, I look for miniatures I really like, miniatures that I want to incorporate into the line, terrain pieces, anything that I can use to further Trilaterum, really.
Right.
And then there's also some commercial licenses that you could add on. So there's a company called 3D Breed that does a lot of sculpting out of Spain. They do a lot of Kickstarters, and you can become a commercial partner with them. So I pay a yearly fee to them, and any of the commercial Kickstarters that I do are I'm allowed to sell. So I pull. There's a lot of lines within theirs. Most of what they do is historical, but they do have some sci-fi stuff. So I add that in. I'll add that in when I see something I like.
Cool.
So
when you get a lot, so you have a license, let's say from the Spanish company.
Yeah.
And they've got a bunch of stuff you do. So do you sort of take their designs, pick and choose, and sort of are you building armies for Trilaterum out of that, and then you kind of push that out onto your website?
Yes. So the rule book itself contains a small number of army lists.
Okay.
When you buy the rule book, I also have an army list expansion, which is free for everybody, that I update on a monthly basis that goes up on Drive-Thru-RPG. And as I develop new armies, new units for the armies, they all go into that army document, which like I said, I updated. It's a combination of army list and errata. Uh-huh. And I add in new rules, I add in new units, and that's exactly right. I kind of look at I see a Kickstarter that I like, I'll look at it and I'll say, well, is there anything in there I could incorporate to a current line?
Yeah.
Or is there maybe a new faction that I could possibly develop out of that? Uh-huh. One of the really neat things about Trilaterum is that army building is very open. Okay. So the only hard and fast rule when you're building an army is for every vehicle you field, you have to field a unit of infantry. Okay. But you don't have to stay within the confines of a single army list. If you do stay within that army list, there are some small bonuses that you can get, but they're really not huge bonuses. So if you say, I really like that big stompy robot with those fish guys with that shark man, hey, great. I want to do the humans with the mushroom people and the lizard people. Awesome. write me, write a little fluff about it. Tell me how they're working together. I'd love to hear that. But that's always been my philosophy with Trilaterum, as well as I include the points calculations right in the rule book, as well as there's a calculator right on my site. So if you have a cool miniature that you want to play, you plug in your stats and it gives you the points value for that miniature. I love seeing what people come up with.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's a really open system. So I do a lot of wacky things. I'll be like, oh, I really like. For example, I picked up a Kickstarter that it was all mechs, all these different multi-part mechs, and one of them had a really cool Iron Giant vibe to it. Okay. So I was like, oh, I really like that. So I got the deliverables of the miniatures. I test printed them. I painted one up. I was like, love it. So then I wrote this whole little story about how this was an AI that was buried on this planet that some explorers went to, and they woke it up, and then all of a sudden some aliens landed and they got into this firefight, and the AI was like, you know what, I'm going to help the humans. And so all of a sudden now this sentient AI robots just are walking around with the humans, know?
Cool.
And that's kind of how the process went. I just saw something and I said, yeah, let's make that work. I think that's cool.
Cool. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning of the pandemic, right? So you just started with resin. You're really liking that. I think you had just started working with JC, you said?
Yes.
And then your lifeline to your community gets shut down.
Yes.
Right? And all of a sudden, and it's a familiar story. Many entrepreneurs in and out of gaming, got whacked, something vicious, and many of them gave up, right? They died. I mean, it's already, you could attest to how hard it is to be an entrepreneur, especially in a niche space like gaming, right?
Yes.
But instead of just kind of folding and giving up, you took this opportunity, and like you said, you had this nest egg, right? That you had, again, very smart entrepreneurship. Instead of being like, oh, look, cool, my little game is going to allow me to buy other, like they say about drug dealers, never do your own stuff, right?
Sure.
Instead of rolling the money into other games and cool stuff like that, you kept it. And so it gave you the capital. What did you do when that moment came and you had to face this new reality? What did you do?
So, like I said, I right after the pandemic hit, that was when I started working with JC.
Yeah.
So I put some of that nest egg to her. Yeah. And the other thing I did was I decided to go back to basics and take the entire game itself and do a full polish pass. Mm-hmm. So we're all working from home. We got a ton of time at our hands. We're looking at our loved ones and trying not to smother them with pillows, me included, And so I really took that time to dive in. I learned how to use desktop publishing to a much greater level. Mm-hmm. I utilized that to take the rule book and really just ratchet it up to about an 11. Full color rule book with a layout that's much more professional. We then decided at the same time to do a full color starter box. So we did the layout for the starter box, and by combining the new visuals, the new starter, the new books, fully black. And before I was doing a saddle stitch, which is just a folded stapled book. I now have glue bound books, the full color starter set. The presentation level just really went up. And when I hit my first show after COVID was starting to subside, it just really paid off. It really did. People saw, wow, I came to your booth last time and you had 10 packs of resin, I have 50. And you have an entire display of painted miniatures for you to see every one of your units that you sell. And oh, by the way, this rule book looks really nice. And oh, wow, there's a full color box up there. And it really just was very satisfying to see everybody everybody's reaction and positive reaction to the changes we made.
Yeah. Well, your booth looked great when we saw it up north. It looks like it doesn't look like it is a full professional booth at a show.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So then last year, first year when we really had a full run of shows was a great year for me. It was really good for Trilaterum. And so this year I'm ratcheting that polish up to another level. So we've got, like you saw at the show, we've got new banners, we've got table runners, we've got new racks that look like not, somebody put it together in their barn,
it's a real live store.
Exactly. And so that's kind of our journey this year. Last year was an extremely aggressive release schedule. We're going to back the release schedule back just a little bit, and we're going to work on a lot more polish. It's great. I'm having fun. I've spent a lot of time doing fluff too. So I'm really trying to flesh out the website with more and more fluff. My wife, Stacy, she's helps me with the fluff as well. She's written a couple of the stories. And our next step in the Trilaterum journey is we're also evolving into having both the 15 millimeter sci-fi and a 28 millimeter skirmish version of the game. So you're playing this huge battle of Trilaterum, and then you can pause and zoom down to that one battle between two units on the board and play a really cool quick play skirmish game. 3 to 5 models per side. Really fast play. You can play it about half hour, 40 minutes. And it uses all the same mechanics from Trilaterum, just at a micro scale.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So we have the rules that are done. The first 6 or 7 warbands are done. I had a couple of previews at the last show, but our next show, which is next weekend at Huzzah in Portland, Maine, I'm going to have a lot more, and I'm hoping to have a little demo of that set up alongside the Trilaterum so that people can see that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, and kind of good to go with that. We're also releasing a World War II to modern version of Trilaterum Firefight for 28 millimeter as well. So that's kind of a companion piece to go with all those. I have all those historical lines, which I do love historicals.
Yeah.
And I just picked up a really cool Vietnam line from 3D Breed. So I decided, you know what? I want something that I could sell alongside these historical miniatures as a game. So Trilaterum, it's called Tango Uniform Firefight. And that's our historical version of the game. And that's available right now as well at shows. It'll be up on the website in the next few months.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So when we were chatting at the show, one thing that got me was your description of your basement. Can you? So you live in a normal house. You've
Correct.
got a normal basement, but now what does your normal basement look like?
It's all 3D printers. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 FDM printers on one side. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 resin printers on the other side, and product racks in the middle.
Crazy. And you just run them all day?
All day, every day.
Wow.
Yep, they just run 24/7 pretty much, except for when they break down, which happens frequently. But that is the crux of 3D printing is you never kind of know when one is going to fail and have a breakdown. That's why I have so many of them, is so that I can make sure that production doesn't stop when that happens.
Something's always running.
Right. I actually had during the pandemic, I had a Kickstarter fulfillment for a guy. And the resin, one of the resin printers went. At that time, I only had 2, so I had to scramble because I was trying to get his Kickstarter fulfillment finished and to him.
Oh, so you were printing for someone else for their Kickstarter?
Yes, for their Kickstarter. Oh. Yeah. He it's Things from the Basement. He did a World War II train in 28 millimeter, and I printed all of his anti-aircraft guns that were on the trains, as well as I also print all of his guns that he has on his steampunk Victorian airships. I also do a couple other pieces for him as well. We have a pretty good working relationship. He actually did up a number of building kits for me that I then added 3D printed gubbins that go into the kit. So you have these really cool modular habitats, and then all these little windows and vents and everything that you can glue on.
Cool. So they're all a little different.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
He did a great job with them. And I really like them. They're very popular. I sell quite a bit of them. So
that is fantastic, Tim. It's such a cool story that when you take this moment in history that was so devastating to so many people, but also to so many businesses, and to see like you had positioned yourself in a way to take advantage of that sort of that pause, and that's just great to see. And I think there's a lot of lessons in your story too about entrepreneurship and design that's really inspiring, I think.
Well, thank you. I won't say that there wasn't some heartache there, because it definitely was some hard choices being made during the pandemic. Because at one point, we were do we close up shop? Do we But luckily, cooler heads prevailed, and we were able to make some.
And some people in another situation, closing up shop probably would have been the right call.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And that's what makes it so hard. You don't know, but because you had saved that money and rolled it into the business, and you were in a great position. We've only got a couple more minutes before we get shut down here. Would you like to say anything about like where it's going, or give just like a really brief, 30,000 foot overview of the game itself, like how it works?
Sure. Like I said, this year is going to be all about polish. We've started a YouTube channel where we're putting gameplay videos, we're putting faction videos, some of the fluff and stories of the game we're putting into video form. We've got a lot of new releases on the horizon. Last year saw the introduction of heavy vehicles, which are really large Titans and that sort of thing added to the game. So we're going to be expanding upon those. We've got a number of new armies. One of the things that we started last year as well was army packs. So typically most of our miniatures are sold, 1 or 2 units to a pack, where we're putting together, 800 or 1,000 points all in one, kind of army in a bag kind of thing. And we're going to be doing more of those because they've been very popular. And we may even just take some of our existing lines and have those as well, so that it's easier for people to get into the game.
Yeah. How cool is it to be able to say something like it's very popular? I know. That right there is a statement on success.
It sometimes when I say things like that, it does kind of, blow my mind a little bit, because, I would have never, if you'd asked me 9 years ago where Trilaterum would be, I would never have thought I would be at the stage I'm at.
Right.
And real quick about the game, it's fast play. You can play a game in about an hour. It's got some really cool mechanics. It's an integrated turn system where one side activates a number up to 3 units, and then play passes to the other side. You kind of go back and forth until the end of the turn. As I said, we've got a number of different armies and factions. They're all available on our website. Come check it out. It's a lot of fun.
And what is the website?
www.trilaterum.com.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Spell Trilaterum, or I will. TRILATERUM. And we'll put that in the show notes also. But just to get it out there now for people who want to just rush out for it. Well,
yes.
Well, thanks for sitting down with me, Tim, and chatting.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to recreate the conversation we had at the con, and we got deeper. It was even cooler.
No, I super appreciate you having me on. We've been friends for years and years and years, and I've always been saying, I really need to get with those guys and see if we could do something. So this is awesome. Well, I really appreciate it.
It's harder than it used to be.
Oh, I know.
But we did it.
I hear you. We did it.
We did it. Awesome. We did it. Well, thank you, Tim, and good luck. And
thank you so much.
We'll have you back on again.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
And that was a D6G Hot Take.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at info@thed6generation.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Thanks for listening and happy gaming.